I would like, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Andrew Mulholland, and he is going to give us a talk on PiNet, a project that was never intended to be, and at the end there will be a chance for 5 minutes worth of questions. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Okay, now I can say good afternoon. My name's Andrew Mulholland, and I'm here to talk about PiNet, which is a project I've been working on for the past far too long. So my name's Andrew Mulholland. I'm a computer science student at Queen's University in Belfast. For those that don't know where Belfast is, there seems to be quite a few people. It's over here, in this other part of the UK that seems to get forgotten about a lot, in Northern Ireland. And over the past kind of 3 years, I've been working on this project called PiNet. It started out, this is apparently meant to be me, it has started out because I was standing in front of a group of kids back when I was in sixth form in a primary school connected to my secondary school, and I was teaching 7 kids how to use a Raspberry Pi, the tiny little credit card sized computers. And we were going through the workshop, and it was going great. It was a 2-day-long workshop. And near the end of the first day, I discovered, oh, flip. I forgot to install the piece of software for the next workshop on all of the Raspberry Pis. We didn't have internet access with the Raspberry Pis, and the package was quite big. So copying it on a pen drive one at a time between all the kids wouldn't really have worked too well. So I did what I normally do. I waffled, and I waffled, and I waffled, until we got to the end of the day, and the kids went home. So they didn't know that there was any problems. I then went around all the Raspberry Pis, I took out the SD card, and I went home. And one at a time installed the package at home using one of my Raspberry Pis onto each card. That took ages, and actually, I didn't actually get round to prepping some of the stuff I'd meant to do that evening anyway for the next day. But it was fine. I went back in, I had all the materials, all on the cards, ready to go, and then I figured out, whoops, I forgot to mark whose card was whose. Now, obviously that's not a huge issue for 7 kids. We still spent a good, 20, 25 minutes mucking around, trying to figure out whose card was whose. Obviously there was probably a much more efficient way to do it, but the kids had a great fun trying to figure out whose card was whose by guessing with the random file names that they'd saved things. It turns out kids like saving things Bob or Jim or my awesome Python file or stuff like that. And so that's a minor issue. And I went home thinking there must have been a better way to do that. There has to have been a better way to do that. I can't be the only person that's had that issue. There must be other Raspberry Pi classrooms out there with other teachers that have done this before. Turns out there was an answer-ish. The answer was a pen drive, as in literally passing a pen drive around a classroom. So I went and I did my research, and I found that a couple of schools had used this magic pen drive method where the Pis had a script on them, and if they saw a pen drive with a certain name, and there was a script on it by a certain name, if you plugged the pen drive in, it would automatically run the script. So teachers were using that so they could back up their students' work as well. So they had a script that would copy the students' work onto the pen drive. To be honest, that's a really rubbish method, because you need to do that at the end of each class if you want to back up the kids' work. And one pen drive for 30 kids takes ages. So I did a bit more digging, and I found a project called the Linux Terminal Server Project. Anyone in the room heard of that? Oh, good. Okay. It is a fantastic project that the point of it was to get Linux machines network booting. And so you have a server machine, and the Linux desktops normally would pixie boot, basically, network boot off this server, and then the kids could log in, which solves both issues, right? Because you're loading the operating system, all the programs and everything off the server, and then the kids log in and it mounts their home folder. But it turns out it didn't work with a Pi very well. Because it turns out that SD card image that you get with your Raspberry Pi has a good 2,000 lines of changes made to it from a base Debian image. So I thought, how hard could that be? I'll just, copy those lines over on a wee Linux server, and I'll set that up for myself, and it'll be great. So within the next month, I played around, and I had about 250 lines that was then calling their main script. It had a GUI. It was really exciting. It was my first kind of program as a student that I'd made that was kind of cool. And I threw it up on GitHub because I was kind of experimenting with that at that point. This is like 17-year-old me here. So I was experimenting at that point with GitHub. And I thought, hey, I'll just throw it up there. So it was great. I was playing around with it. And I was sitting also A-level computing, which is a fantastic A-level. And as part of upper sixth, we had to do a software project. So I thought, yeah, this is kind of fun. Everyone else in my class was doing database systems that, you could enter data and it would generate reports and stuff. And I thought I would do this. My teacher was a bit confused because he'd never used Linux before or anything like that, but I thought, hey, I'll give it a go. And so, over the next year, I wrote a report, and I submitted it with this project. But throughout it, I had to have an end user. There was a guy called Ben over in Manchester, sort of Preston area, somewhere in there in a school, and he had taken my software and he was using it in a classroom. So the software was built to his spec. And throughout it all, I had put my code on GitHub. And I kept using that, mainly just for version control. But that was before students could get free private repositories, so it was all public. And then I got an email. I blurred out the teacher's name of the school, but I got an email. So it turns out my friend Ben either was a bit talkative and he'd told a couple of other schools nearby, or someone just happened to stumble across my project. I think it was Ben was a bit talkative. And this teacher was saying that his friend here had shown him the software. It used to be called Raspberry Pi-LTSP back then. And he set it up for his own school. And he had a really quick query about importing batch users, so like a whole stack, like a CSV file of users. It was at this point it kind of dawned on me, oh, flip, I've just made a project and there's another school using it. Whoops. It turned out, actually, this wasn't the only school using it. Actually, it had slightly spread across the north of England. And at this point, when I actually got this email, there was 6 or 7 schools using it. And this was just the first time I'd heard with one of them asking a question. So I thought, this is fun. I've got time. I'm a student. I can just, throw together a quick wee website just for it, and it'll be great. And I'll just do a few more tweaks, and then I'll just leave it. Someone else can take it over maybe when I get busy. So I made a really rubbish website, and had a nice picture, and had a couple of documentation pages that I kind of stole from my A-level project documentation I had to do. And I thought, that's great. Then I got a tweet. For those that can't read it, it's a prison in Uganda using the software, set up by a charity. Oh dear, it's getting big. I didn't expect that. And then the Raspberry Pi Foundation kind of got interested, and they wrote a blog post about it when we were changing the name to PiNet, because that's a cooler name. And then I started getting emails from people and a lot of tweets, and it started getting used by people. So that was all a fantastic surprise that I'd never really expected. But it's worth going back and actually understanding, why was this necessary in the first place? Why was it a problem? Because it's perfectly fine if you've got 5 kids in a class to have an SD card for each child. That's not a problem. It still works when you've got a class of kids because you've got a class of SD cards. And each SD card has the operating system that you flashed at the start of the year onto it with their user, their home folder. That's fine. Then, when you get a few more kids, maybe 2 classes, that's still fine, I guess. If you want to buy 60 SD cards, that's still fine. It gets a little bit more of a problem when you have a few more kids. We were going to try and fit a few more people on, but then we discovered you wouldn't even be able to see the edges of the people. So what if you have an entire school? So I got an email not long after that other one from a teacher saying, hey, so with the same sort of question, if I want to import a batch of users, we've got 1,500 kids, and we want them to be able to use our Pis. I don't want to type that in one at a time. Turns out there was a school that had been typing them in one at a time, and they'd given it to a student, and the student was typing the users in. They had about 100 kids or something. I feel really bad for that student. If this is recorded, so if that student ever hears it, I'm really sorry. Anyway, the story continues, though. With them, we had a Magpie article with these guys here who decided, hey, how many Pis can we plug into this to break it? They ran out of Pis before it broke, so that's good. And then one of my favorite tweets, with this many SD cards, you know you need PiNet. Because one of the other kind of cool things it does is an SD card. Anyone know how long an SD card takes to flash? Flash a Raspberry Pi SD card. Anyone want to take a guess? 7 minutes. Anyone else want to take a guess?
It always feels like half an hour.
It always feels like half an hour. Yeah. And if you're a teacher and you want to flash 60 SD cards, it will feel a lot longer than half an hour. And so one of the nice things with PiNet is you're just putting a tiny little boot thing on the SD card, and then it's network booting. So I loved that. I then got this tweet. I'm not going to even try and pronounce the name of this. I didn't know what it was at the time. I was just looking through my tweets the other night trying to figure out what should I put on this presentation. And I kind of came across this one. I was kind of curious, what is this? Turns out it's a boat. And so it's on this boat somewhere south of Spain. It's a research vessel for a university. And so they're using PiNet to count fish. Don't ask me how, but this guy knew what he was doing, and he's counting fish. So it became a little bit bigger. I thought I need to probably invest a bit more time. There's a few people from the community who came in and helped, especially with web design. That's not one of my strong areas, especially with design. So we got an awesome artist who came and threw us together a beautiful piece of artwork. We also had our new logo, which is up on the top left there, made by Amy, who's right there. And we made a website for the teachers because it turns out, as I'm sure Dave and Ben also came across, if you're making something for education, and for teachers especially, and you're kind of asking them to set up an entire Linux machine and run a hacky script that's meant to do a thing, and you're kind of expecting them also to set up a network as well and a whole pile of things, it needs to be simple. And so throughout the whole process, this is one of the things I've learned, is it was make it idiot-proof. And so then I started getting emails from schools saying, thank you very much, software's awesome. My 11-year-old student has just set it up. Right, that was unexpected. And I've had a whole pile of emails since of, thanks, my digital leaders have set it up. Or there was a primary school where there was like a 9-year-old had set it up or something. So the story goes on anyway. This is the rough where it is. I kind of expected it to be just there, just in the UK, maybe just the north of England. That would be nice, just kind of keep it there. But there's a few more places now. All the dots represent different things. There is a little thing when it starts up of, would you like to give us some information, please, so we actually know where this is. This is all based off IP addresses, so it's obviously not the most accurate thing in the world. But the green dots are schools. The black ones are, we didn't give you any information. The blue ones are non-commercial organizations, and the red ones are commercial organizations. So it's being used right across the world in a whole pile of places. And it was an A-level project that I kind of thought a school would use. And hopefully no one else. That didn't work. So as for the technical side of things, it's not all written in Python. It actually started out as Bash. Now, anyone in the room that knows Bash knows it is the most fantastic language ever. Yeah, that was a great idea to start the project in Bash. But because it was talking with a lot of command line stuff with LTSP as well, it started out like that. Then I thought, this Bash language is fantastic, obviously, except when you try and do complicated stuff. So I'm going to do a bit of Python. And so there's now a separate script that the Bash script runs. And so I've had a few questions on how all that works, because this is a Bash script calling Python stuff that somehow has to get data back. And so the really simple way of doing it, that a Python developer guy off the internet who I was chatting to on IRC said, this is the best way to do it, actually turned out to be a great way, is you've got the Bash script, it's calling the Python script, and I was trying to read the console, and that was how I was getting the data back, read the shell. But that didn't work when it started to throw errors, and it tried to then parse the errors in the Bash script, and that was a bad idea. So now it actually writes to a file, which I'd never thought at the start would be a way to do it. So that's kind of the really simple technical overview. As for the way that a Pi network boots, I got a whole pile of questions about that. I can actually show you. This is the exciting bit. Do we have a Pi? Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Turn it off and on again. I have been told never do demos on a stage. There we go. So this is the Raspberry Pi booting. And it's booting off a wee virtual machine just on my laptop. PiNet A is really simple to set up because you can set it up on a virtual machine. It just runs Ubuntu. And speed-wise is one of the big questions we get is, I'm loading an entire operating system off a network. There is no possible way that this can be as fast as an SD card. That wasn't very long. But obviously, the exciting bit here is I can log in as Bob, because that makes sense. And just like a normal Raspberry Pi that would be sitting in a kid's bedroom at home, I get a lovely desktop. With a nice background as well. Do you like the background? I'll admit I might have spent quite a few hours trying to find a nice background. And this works just like a normal Raspberry Pi. All the software just works as usual. But the advantage is this is network booted. If you as a teacher wanted to push out a piece of software to everyone, you install it on the server, you reboot all your Pis. That's it. If you want 1,000 users, funny enough, there's now a batch user module. And you can give it a CSV file, and it'll import that. Let me see if I can actually get it back. Not that one. Oh, helpful. So finally, if I can get my slides back. Yeah, there we go. So finally, that was me. I've got a request, a plea, you could say. This is used by teachers across the world, and therefore it needs to be stable. We don't push versions out until they're thoroughly tested, because if it breaks in a school, there's a teacher's lesson ruined for that day. So I need help with that. All you need is to set up a really quick virtual machine and follow the really simple documentation and plug your Pi in. If a 9-year-old can do it, I would kind of hope most of you guys would be able to do it. So I need help testing it, breaking it. Please break it. But if you break it, open a GitHub issue and tell me you've broken it, that would be great. And if you know a school that's using Raspberry Pis and they're going with that old method, do them a favor and let them know. about this. And the other one is, if anyone is any good at translating, it's one of the big projects I'm working on right now, is getting this localized across the world. Because I get a lot of questions from random places, from China to India to Kenya to all those places. A lot of places that, who would have thought, a lot of places don't speak English. So is anyone in the room that would like to help with that, please grab me at the end. And we have a mailing list specifically for people who would like to help translate it. There's my details. There's the PiNet details. Thank you very much.
That was quite a story, Andrew. Thank you very much. We have time for 5 minutes of questions. So please form a queue here if you have any questions. Whilst people come up, I have a question for you. You were asking for help. Don't worry, it's an easy question.
Yes.
Are you going to be around for the sprints on Monday?
I will be about for the morning, but unfortunately, there's only one flight to Belfast every day. So I will be hopping on the plane about midday. So I'll be about maybe for the morning.
Okay, fantastic.
Hi, thanks for the talk. That was really interesting. One of the things that's really cool about Raspberry Pis is you get to use hardware and plug things into them and that sort of thing. Can you still do that when you use this technology?
Yes, so I actually should have mentioned that, apologies. A lot of people have heard of thin clients, right? Yes? What about fat clients? Okay, few less people. This is where a device uses its own local hardware, and it's literally just the hard drive is mounted as a network mount. So actually, this Pi thinks it is a Pi. In all intents and purposes, it is a Pi. It's just its storage isn't here. It's somewhere else. And actually, one of the cool things I can do is, I'm not showing it on the screen anymore. Trust me, that the Pi is still working, and I've just taken the card out. The storage is not here. It's on there. But the Pi thinks it is a normal Pi. So all the normal hardware stuff just works. But yes, that's a question that's asked a lot.
That's really clever. Thanks.
Thanks for that. Really good. How do you manage working on such a large project and also having a life outside of working on a project used by thousands of people?
Do I have a life? Is that? It's very much one that I work on in my free time. I can't take, obviously, full credit for it. The LTSP is underneath it, and this is mainly just making it idiot-proof and Pi-proof and kid-proof. I don't think that's possible, but try to make it kid-proof anyway. It's a project that I just work on in my free time, and do I have a life? I don't know about that. But hence why I need help to test it, so I can have more of a life, something like that, yeah. So,
okay. Thank you.
We have time for 2 very, very quick questions.
Okay.
Hello. So how much does it load over the network to start? Does it load the whole 2 gig, or?
Funny enough, actually, that's another question that's asked a lot. No. So it treats the card, or it treats the virtual card like a SD card. And the Pi will only pull what it needs when it needs it. So to boot a Pi, the other quite nice advantage is we can compress the operating system and send it over the network that way. So actually, it's only pulling maybe 100 meg, 150 meg for each Pi when it boots up.
Cool. Cheers.
Hi there. Thank you for the talk. I gather that the next steps for this is to perhaps improve upon stability and performance. But are there any other key features that you're looking to push out in the future?
Yeah. So it's a bit behind Raspbian right now. So it's still running Debian, or based on Debian Wheezy, which people might know is already end of life a bit. It's stable, which is great, but there's a lot of new fixes that have come in with Jesse that have broken a few things. And so I'm working on that. And there's a number of other little weird things, like some teachers want to be able to set custom video settings on their Pis and have that be pushed out automatically. So that's been working on. And the final one is, as some people have heard, the Raspberry Pi 3 can network boot without an SD card, which is very exciting. So I'm working on that. It's a bit buggy, but that's a big one that would be nice if it works.
So can we give Andrew a round of applause for such an excellent contribution to Pycon UK? In just over 5 minutes, we have from